Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're across this great wide world. I wanted to continue this discussion on the BIA, which is the Bureau of Indian Affairs. I was talking to one of my daughters, and then I was talking to one of my colleagues on Friday about the the BIA and how when we look at Native American culture, pretty much through the early 19th century, even going back to 17th century. We have to look at when the Bureau of Indian Affairs founded was in 1830s, where a lot of this occurred after the Trail of Tears or right before the Trail of Tears, because remember what was going on at this time is what I called the Jacksonian principle of what I would consider for white Europeans that were selling into this or white elite people is we had the plantation owners in the South, but then what I still call today is the yeoman class. And the philosophy or the psychological principle of this was right before or right after the revolution. There became a concern by the plantation owners that we needed to create a yeoman class. In other words, we didn't want to have this disparity between just plantation owners and what the terminology was back then was crackers or what was called poor white people. And what was occurring at this time is there was this disparity that was occurring, and many of the white elitist or white leaders of the time looked at this and valued the discussion or the philosophy or even the psychology. We needed to create a yeoman class or what I call 40 acres and a mule to keep the rebellions down. And part of this became the issue of what we did with the Native Americans, or as which would became under the Ulysses S. Grant presidency, the Indian problem. In other words, what we would do, and consequently, under the a lot of this occurred in the 1880s, 1860s, etc. And we had all these wars prior to this, and we can go all the way back and look at King Philip's War, which more or less they tried to the white elitists tried to put them in enslavement and realized that they knew too much about the area, too much about the territory. It's not like African Americans where they didn't know much about the area and would uh, could not be able to enslave them, or would move them out, but still the issue became that a lot of deaths and destruction would occur amongst tribal people in the 17th, 18th, 19th century. But the issue becomes we formed the BIA, but when the BIA was formed in the 1830s, technically there have been changes and there have been positive changes. And I'm not going to deny there's not been positive changes. But the issue becomes to me that we need to take that step further than where we've been right now. Because my concern is always is the casinos and the gambling, because I was telling somebody the other day, it is a poor person's sport. In other words, if the casinos didn't think they were going to make money, they would not exist. And for the most part, poor people are the ones that will go and buy lottery tickets, go to casinos, hoping to hit it big on some number. And like I said, I've talked about this, the psychology principle in the mind, and we've got the subconscious and we got the conscious mind. People that are poor as broke will continue to be poor as broke because they can't manage money, and that's got to be something that's taught at a young age. And sometimes I regret that myself because I think my poor father would try to teach me things, and what didn't dawn on me until later in life And then when you do that, you're what's the old cliche? You're behind the eight ball, and you've got to adjust to make those differences. But part of this is that I'm not a big fan of the casinos nor the lottery because it really doesn't. I've seen this doesn't help the situation on the tribes. And for the most part, like I said, right now, you've got your baby boomers, your Gen X that are definitely seeing the casinos. But I was talking to somebody that was not informed about the institution that they thought, well, we can get more casinos, and I'm under the belief that we're at that saturation point between the online gambling, the other casinos in many states, that it's really reluctant for people to do that. Granted, they'll do it, but as the baby boomers die and Gen X start dying out, we're going to have a over need. It's almost the same analogy that I tell people about in the '70s, the height of the malls, '70s, '80s. But once Amazon came along, eBay, we saw the dwindling, and the decay of malls, and now they're rarely just in areas where they're in affluent neighborhoods. Case in point, here in Cincinnati, you have one out in Liberty Mall, which is just south of Monroe, and then we have the Kenwood Mall area, which is out in Kenwood, which is out in Indian Hill, etc., where the people that have money can spend money. So the point is the same factor that when we start talking about casinos. And when we're talking about casinos, we're talking about what they use these programs for infrastructure and social services. It's like medical as well as road repair. And a lot of these tribes or a lot of these lands do not have running water. So it coincides with my latest book, Water Quality on the Reservation, and that these tribes have to either take in water or they have to get cistern water. And remember, we're not talking about a lot of areas that they have like housing. They have mobile homes, and not necessarily do they have running water. Some do, some don't, but for the most part, many don't. So this creates a more of a issue. And the other thing that boggles me is the Biden administration wants to create more casinos, and the Biden administration says they've got all this kind of money, and they send it over to Ukraine to fight a war that, and for the most part, I have issues with because the fact of the matter is Ukraine was always part of Russia, and you can see that on maps. Even though they did get their independence in 1930s or yeah, in the 1930s, 1990s, the most part is that we're sending aid to a country that we can use up better money for things like infrastructure on some of these reservations, rather than just give that money uh, to a country that creates a quasi civil war, what I'm basically calling, and supporting being in a place where we have no business being, even though we have people within the Biden administration that believes in the NATO and putting them in NATO, which is going to complicate things, especially with the Russian uh, uh, Putin, because the fact of the matter, he does not want Ukraine to be part of the NATO structure. So, and there again, I think we've got our compasses messed up concerning what we see is important and what is not important. So the point I try to make here is not necessarily about, and then I also believe that the administration within the BIA is probably too heavy top heavy, and really instead of having 12 divisions of the BIA, I believe we should narrow that down into 4 divisions. Have an east, south, uh, uh, and two divisions in the west, and that would be a good way. And then those extra instead of having 12 regions, have narrow it down to 4, and then taking that additional money and get it into the hands of tribal leaders that can have a more impact on the tribal lands. And when I talk about tribal lands, I'm talking about all tribal lands, but majority of the tribal lands exist west of the Mississippi. And there again, we talk about the casinos, and I just think this casinos is not a factor. It's a factor that can inhibit the growth of many reservations and the empowerment of many Native Americans. And I really honestly believe the abolishment of these should occur under the BIA, and that the BIA should be condensed into a more condensed form, a more 21st century, where we empower more Native Americans and get rid of this feeling of hopelessness, high drug problems, social issues, and develop infrastructure in so many of the Native American lands. So anyway, these are issues that I believe are just as, like I said, when you get the government involved in certain issues, tendency are is they will lead to not proper issues concerning, that can help people rather than it becomes more of a bureaucracy rather than a democracy. So in this case, I believe that we need to create more of a democracy and empowerment on the reservations rather than more bureaucracy, which doesn't help the native tribes. Anyway, these are some food for thoughts for me. Please like and subscribe to my channel. Feel free to look up my books on Amazon. They're under two titles, Dr. Boyd T. Miller and also B. Thomas Miller. Have any comments, feel free to comment and view my videos. And my email is bthomasmiller, as it's spelled, bthomasmiller, psych, PSYCH, at gmail.com. Anyway, folks, hope to talk to you real soon and have a great beginning of the week. Hopefully I'll post a video sometime in the middle of the week and hope to talk to you soon. Bye.